Our icon today wears a hat with many feathers. He's the founder of IMM, who build consumer brands in international markets. For example, he runs all the Wendy's and the Jamie Oliver restaurant chains in India. He studied English literature at the University of Oxford and has worked around the world. He's a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal, Business India, Economic Times, and other publications, and has given TED Talk. He enjoys cooking and gardening, and above all, he has a heart of gold. It gives me immense delight to welcome Jasper Reid as our icon in the Inspiring Icons Insight series. Welcome, Jasper.
Thank you, Sangeeta. I'm delighted to be included on your show.
We're so excited to have you here to share your out-of-box experiences. You've had an incredibly interesting life, and I was going through your TED Talk, which you gave in 2016, in which you're talking about the role of adaptability in one's life and the current scenario of such unpredictable times. If you could share how that adaptability has or will help us go through the Corona-19, the whole pandemic, that would be wonderful.
Look, I think personally, as I've developed in life, the reason I gave that TED Talk was because I felt very strongly that of all the things that people need these days, particularly young people, who are evolving. I mean, we're all evolving. The thing that matters most is adaptability. And maybe it's always mattered. The world's always changed. It might have high IQ or high emotional intelligence, but life is sort of changed, really. And if the mission, if you like, is to get the most out of life, then flexibility feels very important. It's an enabling thing. It's an empowering thing. It's the mindset that moves you between things. It's the thing that makes you able to change. And so, I mean, if I think about the current period, it's obviously a period of change. It's easy to do a TED Talk, and I think even in the TED Talk, I said this is very easy to say. So it's easy to talk conceptually about flexibility, but the COVID-19 global situation has been a real test of it for everybody, pretty much simultaneously. And actually, one of my points in my TED Talk, which I believe, because adaptability is not an abstract thing, it's built up of certain things. And what you realize with some people was they weren't flexible because they were scared. Because flexibility requires bravery, right? And it's been interesting, both personally and looking around, to see who's actually brave. I mean, I'd like to think for me and my family, we've done a reasonable job of being flexible during this period. Certainly, we've never had a more enriching period.
Yes, that was what my second question was, that, a lot of businesses have been affected, and I'm sure yours as well, but you turned this adversity into an opportunity to reach out to so many in dire need. And, so what was your vision and what was your experience during this crisis?
I mean, I think I'd like to say there was a vision, Sangeeta, but it was really accidental more than anything, and a matter of circumstance or fate. I mean, on a practical level, of course, what happened here was my family business employs almost 600 people. And we pay all our people, which isn't always the case, particularly in India. When crisis happens, there's sometimes a bad habit of tossing your people overboard first. So we were never going to do that. But of course, once they shut all our 25 restaurants, you thought, well, what are we going to do? We can't just sit here. And we kind of accidentally got into helping people who needed help. And we fed a few people just, with our own money and our own supplies. And then we fed a few more people And then bit by bit, we were feeding and supporting more than 30,000 people, families, you know, migrant workers, daily wagers, minority group. We suddenly found ourselves in the middle of this world. And actually, it was really interesting, Sangeeta, because it was obviously a good thing to do. And it's obviously a satisfying thing to do. And if you believe in karma, then you'd like to think that it'll be good for those receiving and giving. But it did something more than that. It basically bonded you with your fellow man. And it also, in a way, it totally trivialized the virus, right? Everyone's got a view on this, but I'm personally not scared of this virus, right? Sometimes you don't even mention that. You mention that and you get 100 people screaming at you, saying you're irresponsible or you don't understand it or the rest of it. But I was never particularly scared anyway, because I just don't see it as being a huge risk. But that's a personal view. But certainly, once you've seen someone who's been totally ruined by an overnight lockdown, you realize there's 100 things worse than this. And so, in that sense, we were lucky, because not only we were helping people, but we were creating a context for this, right? And one of the other conclusions I guess I've had I moved to India with my family to set up a business from scratch here, and you don't typically do that if you're not prepared to take some risks. And I have a personally high appetite for risk, which I don't know what that's to do with. I'm mainly Irish. I think the Irish like to go out and do stuff, have an adventure. But the point is that life is risk. Life is risk. And in a funny way, I'd love to think of the world, going back to the adaptability point, I'd love to think of everybody becoming more adaptable because of this. But actually, it scared the pants off the vast majority of people, and probably, frankly, made them more inflexible than before. It certainly distanced those that are privileged enough to distance themselves from their fellow man. And I think it's had an enormously destructive effect, in a way, on humanity and being human. Going back to that adaptability point, and part of the reason I think people that are adaptable do well is the vast majority of people are set in their ways, and it will take much more than 18 months or whatever it is of a virus to unset those ways. There's a lot of compassion babble doing the rounds about how everyone will change. Personally, I don't buy it. I'd like to be surprised.
And how has this changed your life, this going through this period, and your family, how has it impacted you as a person?
We've always been a pretty close-knit group, which is, I think it's something you get when you move to a new place, right? So, necessarily being hugger-mugger together in lockdown brings you together. But we did all sorts of projects, Sangeeta. We did the social enterprise. But Elsa built her own little charity, feeding 70, 80 dogs every day all around Delhi. This little girl going out and doing all this stuff. Cecilia and I launched a little TV cookery show. So, literally from scratch, we now have a TV cookery show. The business has had loads of projects. So I think it's been a really, really fruitful time, which is something to do with time itself, right? The gift of the virus, if you can call it a gift, is definitely some time. So has this changed us? I'm not sure it's changed us. I think it's affirmed a bunch of things, Sangeeta, and certainly it's been a real time of gifts.
So what is the secret behind having this mindset of going beyond the obvious threat? What is the secret that people can learn from?
I'd love to think there was a potion or a technique. I think it's something that's acquired. Well, it's nature and nurture.
Yes.
As I said, you know, we'll have a high appetite for risk. You know, but what underlies that, right? I think kind of what underlies it is an upbringing and a life where you were encouraged to take risks, where you moved around, where you were thrown out of the house, where you weren't mollycoddled and soft-soaped, you know. And I had the most loving upbringing, as did Megan, my wife, as do our children. But there was always a great celebration of doing stuff and getting out there and doing and moving and changing and experimenting. And in a way, I think that's part of the answer, because it is all linked to this adaptability thing. But the more, if you have a joy of that and a joy of the new, then you're always interested to learn. You're always intrigued by stuff. But maybe to sum it up, I mean, look how extraordinary the world and life is. Look at the limited time you've got. The simple idea that you go out and discover as much as you can, right? And you do need means to do this, and you do need mobility, and you need lots of things. So I'm not saying it's a given, but what could be more incredible than just living life itself, right? But if you want to just live life yourself, you have to get out there and live life. And if you do that, I think you'll be better at all sorts of change, and you'll be more flexible, etc. Of course, what people actually do is, from a very young age, they start to define themselves. You know, I always find it staggering that from the youngest age, there's this chain of events where people age 7 are thinking about what they need to be age 10, GCSEs, A-level, IB, degree, job, this, marriage, retirement. But what's the answer? The answer is we all end up in the same place. But boy, you're missing out if you don't spread your wings from the beginning to the end of the journey.
Yes. So it's keeping the explorer alive and giving it permission to look out and try. It's really, like you said, try. And with that, you need the adaptability, you need the risk-taking capacity.
What we're saying here is, I mean, one thing the virus tells you, right, is that life is precious. It does tell you that life is precious, but life is live. Life is living, right? And in that sense, you're right. In the end, the permission just to enjoy and participate in the journey is enough, right? That's enough. The curse is, of course, believing that there's a pecking order, or there are things to be achieved as such, or there are credentials, and those things are typically the enemy of the well-lived life, I think. So I think you're right. It's just, you know, you almost, if you think about children, right, probably the greatest and most enabling thing on earth would be for children to be told, live your life. Live every minute of your life and live it live.
One last question. I know you don't believe in regrets because you live in the moment. But if you were to look around, were there any things that you feel they could be different in order for people to live life fuller and in the moment?
What this period certainly taught us, and it has taught us some new things. It's not just reminders, right? Because we didn't feed 30,000 people before, right? That is a new thing for us, and it's a great thing. But you would never learn more about compassion, or at least we have never learned more about compassion than we have done in the last 3 months, right? Possibly more than the previous 30 years. As the song goes, you know, love is the answer. And maybe just related to that a bit, and I think this is a very good maxim. It's certainly one that we try and remind ourselves. I have to remind myself of it every day, right? And we try and help the children think this way, and is another simple thing, which is sort of related to compassion, really, which is just think of others, right? Think of others. We're all this is, I suppose, another syndrome of maybe it's innate in man, but we're all incredibly egocentric. Yeah, it's quite boring too. It's there are many more people than just us. So the thinking about others as its own reward, but I haven't made the effort to connect with them, right? So it's not easy. It's like meditation. It's not easy. It requires practice. But if the world was more compassionate and the world thought about others, I suspect those would be at least two of the keys to the great safe of life.
That's beautiful, Jasper. One last bit, just to leave at a very spicy note, is that people who know you personally, they know how beautifully you have integrated in India. The culture, the lifestyle. What is the secret?
So my little, not secret, because I don't make a secret of it, but I love India, Sangeeta. I love India. And if you love people and you love life, I think India is the Eden Gardens of, that's quite an apt term, the Garden of Eden, but you know, it's the great stadium of life.
That's beautiful. That's at that note, I would really express my gratitude for your adaptability to share your insights, even in when you have a power cut and you are perspiring in the heat of 45-50 degrees centigrade. Thank you so much, Jasper, for sharing your insights and having a candid talk with us.